Tomorrow, October 13th, is Indigenous Peoples Day, a holiday first recognized in the United States by the city of Berkeley in 1992, and more recently by presidential proclamation each year of President Biden's time in office. The day was conceived in part as a counter-celebration to Columbus Day, to shine light on the enduring harm caused by colonization and to honor the resilience and ongoing contributions of Indigenous peoples across the Americas. As we mark this day, it feels especially fitting to reflect on our own weekly practice of acknowledging the land we gather on, to consider not only the words we recite, but the history and responsibility they point toward. Each week, we recite a land acknowledgement that reminds us that our fellowship sits on the unceded territory of the Amamutsun tribal band. In it, we affirm our support for their efforts to restore land stewardship and our own responsibility to care for this land thoughtfully. I'll admit that I, and perhaps others among us, have mixed feelings about this weekly statement. I don't doubt that this land is not truly ours, but I still wrestle with what that means and what, if anything, I can do about it. A few weeks ago, Carole suggested ways to support the Amamutsun's ongoing work to preserve their culture and reclaim stewardship of their ancestral lands. In that spirit, I've posted information on the bulletin board with the QR code about how to contribute to their land trust. Still, I haven't fully identified the source of my discomfort. Perhaps it's guilt, or it's grief, or the sense that words alone just aren't enough. But maybe this discomfort in itself is an invitation, a reminder to stay awake to our history, to listen, and to act with integrity. If you too feel the tension between acknowledgement and action, between sorrow and hope, I invite you to hold that feeling gently. Perhaps together we can find some solace and some guidance in today's sermon.
Today's reading comes from the Reverend Alicia Forde, who serves our Unitarian Universalist Association as the new UU Communities Fund Director. Am I a guest here? Here in this house? Are you? Are we guests here? Here in this house? And whose house do we inhabit? In the small world of our lives, the borders between us, easements, fences, gates, hedges, serve to delineate, to separate us, to remind us of where my property begins and ends, where your property begins and ends. If you cross over, are you a trespasser or a guest in my house? You've worked to own this small plot of land and the house erected on it. You've claimed it. It is now a part of yourself, your definition of self, your identity. If I cross over your fences, I am a trespasser, or am I a guest in your house? What does it mean then that in 1845, the United States crossed over into Mexico and took half of that country, took land, resources, labor? Was the U.S. the trespasser or a guest? Are there to be no consequences for taking what does not belong to you? Should we simply forget whose house we inhabit? How do we acknowledge and address the complexities of our history, present, and, if we're not conscious, the future of dominance? What would right relationship look like? Whose house do we inhabit? For we are not hosts, we are not owners, nor are we guests. What then is our responsibility?
Let's shift gears. And I have some stuff I want to share with you today on this Indigenous People Sunday. As a Unitarian Universalist, I want to be proud of our faith. I want to be proud of our history, the people who came before us, all the folks who were practicing love and working for justice in their time. And there is a lot to be proud of. But there are also chapters in our history where, in retrospect, Unitarian Universalists really missed the mark. And so, in honor of Indigenous Peoples Day tomorrow, I want to invite you to sit with some difficult truths about Unitarian Universalists of the past and how they interacted with First Nations people on this continent. And in particular, I want to share some information with you about how in the 19th century, some of our Unitarian ancestors were involved deeply in the ongoing efforts to so-called civilize Indigenous people and destroy their cultures. It's not good, but it's what happened, so we should know. In 1870, President Ulysses S. Grant reached out to various Protestant denominations in an attempt to outsource the management of Native American reservations, outsource the management of the reservations from the government to the nonprofit sector. And so, because of this, for a few years, the American Unitarian Association, which was the predecessor to our UUA today, the American Unitarian Association actually took over administering the Ute Reservation in Colorado. I'm kind of shocked by that, actually, but that actually happened. So the AUA placed 4 Unitarian ministers there. And the goal of their work, to quote an AUA publication from 1877, their goal was, and I'm quoting now, to meet the Indians in a humane Christian spirit, saving them from trickery, robbery, intemperance, and other vices of frontier life. Oh, and to present to them the better phases of a Christian civilization. Oh my gosh, y'all, can you imagine? Our Unitarian ancestors were willing to go along with a government scheme to convert Native Americans to Christianity and destroy their culture. It sounded like a good idea to these Unitarians because they believed that their way was morally and spiritually superior to the Native people that they would be serving. So, what they thought they were doing was going in and improving these people. It didn't go very well. Their intentions were good, but these ministers did not understand Ute culture at all. And in fact, the only good news in the story that I can find is that these ministers did not manage to have much of an impact on the Ute people while they were there. So good intentions could have been a horrible impact. Instead, they were just kind of incompetent. So that happened. That literally happened, and that's part of our history. The other thing I want to share is that a few years ago in 1886, excuse me, a few years later, the American Unitarian Association, same association of Unitarians, set up a boarding school. Set up a boarding school on the Crow Reservation in Montana. It was called the Montana Industrial School for Indians. And their mission this time was to take Crow children away from their families and indoctrinate them into white culture. Now we know this is not a good thing. It happened all over the US and Canada, and we were part of it. So I want to read to you from another AUA publication describing the work of the school so you get a sense of it. And it's painful. This publication reads as follows. Here are 50 children taken out of the lowest and most degraded forms of savage home life. Ouch. This is the language they were using. And they are taught, the article continues, taught to love neatness, cleanliness, and practical Christian life. And it goes on, instead of being thrust back into a sea of barbarism with no career open to them, Like, what even is this? And no one to look after them. They will enter at once upon a life of usefulness and become zealous and successful laborers for the civilization of their race. Oh my gosh, it's such a mess. It's awful. This actually happened. The white minister who ran the school added, he said, they are all such bright, promising boys. And he says, how such good appearing fellows come of an ignorant, lazy, squalid, orphaned race is a constant surprise to us. I shall dread the time, if that comes, when they slip back into their old abodes and possibly leave. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry I'm even saying these words to you. These are Unitarian ministers and leaders. Looking back, I find it so appalling and tragic to realize that because these mainstream Unitarians of the late 19th century saw the indigenous cultures they were supposed to be there to serve, that they saw them as squalid, ignorant, and degraded. Because of this, they were actively complicit in destroying the relationships between children and their families and their culture. It's so wrong. It is also our history. And I just want to invite you, I feel like I just need a breath, even just having shared that. So I want to invite you to just take a breath with me and acknowledge that happened in our past. Those are our people who did that. But since those days, we have tried to do better. So now I want to turn to some more recent history that does give me hope. In 2009, at the General Assembly that we had in Salt Lake City, Utah, the president of the UUA at that time, Bill Sinkford, offered a formal apology for the 19th century Unitarian mismanagement of the Ute Reservation. And he spoke these words that I think are worth sharing. To the Ute people, he said, the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations offers our heartfelt apology. We participated, however ineptly, in a process that stole your land and forced a foreign way of life on you. We ask for your forgiveness, and we promise to stand with you as you chart your way forward. So that was 2009. And then 3 years later, in 2012, the UUA General Assembly did something else. They formally repudiated a principle which is called the doctrine of discovery. And I remember at that time, I didn't know what that was. It was a big learning for me. And I want to recap, just in case that was not part of your education either. Jumping back farther in time, in 1493, the Pope issued a decree supporting the desire of Spain to colonize the so-called New World. And in this decree, the Pope declared that any land not inhabited by Christian people was fair game to be discovered and claimed by Christian rulers, who would then go on to convert all those people to Christianity, thus, in theory, saving their souls. In practice, this was a license to conquer and colonize the Americas, Africa, and anywhere else that European armies were able to seize power by force. And this is what is known as the doctrine of discovery, the principle that any non-Christian land could be discovered and claimed by Christian rulers. Jumping forward to 1823, our US Supreme Court actually affirmed it in a unanimous decision, which said that the principle of discovery gave European nations an absolute right to New World lands. In other words, our own Supreme Court in 1823 affirmed that Indigenous people in the Americas had no right to live on their traditional lands. Supreme Court ruling. And so the ever expanding United States was given the supposed right to boot Indigenous people out by force, which of course happened over and over and over again. So this was the doctrine that we as Unitarian Universalists formally repudiated in 2012, not that long ago, 2012. And since then, we have been trying to do better. You might remember that Unitarian Universalists were very involved in supporting the protesters at Standing Rock in 2016. And right here in Santa Cruz, this congregation, like many others, has been including for a long time now a land acknowledgement each Sunday. And of course, we're working on building respectful relationships with our neighbors, the Amamutsan, today. So we continue to build and grow those relationships. And this work is really inviting us as a community and as individuals into not only relationships with people who are here now, but also into spiritual reflection on our relationship to the land. For those of us whose ancestors came from elsewhere, when we acknowledge to ourselves that we are here on stolen land, I think we have to ask, what does that mean for us? What are we to do? And in the words of the Reverend Alicia Forde, what then is our responsibility? My own ancestors came over from England about 400 years ago, and they settled on the land that they came to call New York and New Jersey. Today, I personally live just a couple of miles from Jamestown, Virginia, one of the earliest European settlements on the continent, which has a long history of violence against the Powhatan peoples who have lived on this land where I am for many centuries. So my home, where I am right now, is on stolen land, just like yours. And what am I to do with that knowledge? You know, it's not like I can go back to England. My family hasn't had a home there for what, 16 generations? When I think about it, it is somewhat jarring to realize that there is literally nowhere on this earth that I have an inalienable right to be. There's no land on earth that I can point to and say, this land is my land in any moral sense that can truly handle the complexity and the tragedy of the history that we're all living with. And yet, I am here. We are all here on Turtle Island, this continent, trying to do better now that we know better, as the great Maya Angelou put it. So maybe there is an invitation to let go of the need to have a right to be here and just be grateful to be here. Maybe there is an invitation to be good neighbors now and to be mindful of how lucky we are to be in this place right now, to be humble about how we got here and curious about who our neighbors are and what their hopes and dreams might be now. Maybe there is an invitation to stay open to thinking and learning about what meaningful repair might look like. As Alicia Forde reminds us, we are not owners, nor are we guests. So breathe, wait for wisdom, and let it come. May it be so.